Last week on the Nicoletti Show.
Let's welcome him to the show. Nick, what's up, baby?
What's up, Al? How you doing, man? Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
How long was it before you really started fine-tuning that sales process in those phone calls?
When you get on the phone with a homeowner, especially when you don't have that confidence yet, it's like all of that goes out the window and you're like, shoot, what am I supposed to say next? So it's a lot of just having a bad call, getting on to the next one, right? That's how you get better at anything, is just repetition.
It's funny how when you ask more questions, you'll get some other answers you didn't expect.
You can talk about sales processes and trying to, convince homeowners to sell. You're never going to convince a homeowner to sell their property at the price that a wholesaler or an investor needs it to make money, right? You're never going to convince somebody to do that. So the way that you find opportunities is by asking the right questions.
Nick, any cool, crazy deals that you're working on now that you're looking forward to?
It was a 8-property portfolio in Pasco County, and all of the properties were just absolutely beautiful. It was unbelievable because this guy was a real estate broker for 20 years. And I actually went to his house. I met this guy, went over there. He said that the portfolio is worth about 1.4 million. And I offered him like 850,000. We settled on 900,000, but we ended up selling it for almost 1.1 million. So we had a $163,000 assignment fee after, double close, so after fees and all that sort of stuff. I will quote him. When I gave him that offer, he was like, I like your offer, and it's a really good offer because I know that I could sell these properties for more on the market, but the speed, the convenience, and the certainty of your offer far outweighs the potential upside of putting that on the market.
Amazing. That's a big assignment fee right there. Why does Nick Camrata love probate?
Because I already told you, man, because I get to work with you on probates.
I love it.
So I get to hang out with Al. No, so probates, first of all, probates can be really good deals because, and this is the situation with most people that go into probate and they inherit a property. A lot of them, they sell because they have their own stuff going on and they don't want to deal with the property. So you're able to get really good deals. Find what your passion is and stick with that and find one strategy to really master. Because like I said before, there's a lot of people, they spend a lot of time doing a bunch of different things instead of just getting really good at one thing. If you haven't gotten your first deal, pick one marketing strategy and just crush that. Get really, really good at that because it's absolutely inevitable that if you do that, every marketing channel works if you work it.
Thank you for coming on the show and talking about these things.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, what a great episode that was last week on the Nicoletti Show. If you missed any of that, go back, check that out, and rewind. And you all know you can find all the content on the Nicoletti Show. It's just scan the QR code. You'll find us there through iTunes, Spotify, Audible, all those resources, and all the social media pages. We bring on the best guests to provide the best value to you. And we are rolling with this season 5, part 2 of what we're getting into this year. So I have a very special guest on the Nicoletti Show tonight. We're going to dive in on this. Michael Robertson, the land guy, doing a lot of land all around Florida, has students, has a group. He's inspiring a lot of people, and it's so special to see the impact that he's having on his students and his group. So we're going to get into some of the land things. Land is super hot right now. Every time I am hearing about land in different counties in Florida, I'm always intrigued as to why and where are these coming from and how are these leads actually working and what are some of the tips and tricks to get into this. And this is why I want to have Michael on, because in an economy and in a market like this, it is critical to learn about strategies so you don't just pick up single family, you don't just pick up commercial, but you pick up these other opportunities that can be low-hanging fruit, right? A lot of that out there. So I'm ready to go. Got my pen, got my paper, got my laptop going. I got the energy tonight, and it's another Wednesday night in the studio, so let's rock this thing. Hey, everybody, my name is Al Nicoletti. I'm an attorney here in Florida, and welcome to the Al Nicoletti Show, where I bring on real estate super investors, rising rock stars, movers and shakers, and leaders of clubs in their communities that educate, entertain, and inspire all things on Florida real estate, and always going to provide the best guests in the game to you. Whether we're in land, single family, commercial, marketing, branding, any type of real estate, either right in the industry or adjacent to it, we're going to provide that value to you on how you can take your company to the next level. And also, I thought it's not even just your company, it's your life, it's your personal life, it's your family, it's your friends, it's leveling everybody up in this business. And this is what we want to provide to you. So on the show tonight, I got a very special guest. And I want him to talk about how he even found me, because he found me. And ever since we got to connect, it's been so special. I learned a lot about what he's doing with his group. And Michael Robertson is crushing it with land. And we're going to dive in on tips and tactics and tricks and all those little secrets with land. So without further ado, let's welcome him to the show. Michael, welcome, my friend. How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to have you on. I was excited when you reached out to me the first time. I got the email and I'm like, wait a second. I'm always intrigued to meet new investors. But, I remember you talked about, hey, I get into land, I'm getting into this. And I'm like, where did this guy find me? And now you're on the Al Nicoletti Show, the very thing that you found me on.
Oh, well, I greatly appreciate it. In my community, I had so many people keep talking Al Nicoletti, and I finally said, "Who is this guy?" And so as I dug further, I found the Al Nicoletti Show and reached out to you, and I'm so very glad that we connected.
Absolutely. And, even when we did the student call with your students, it was great to see that you get into things like probate and land and all the niche-y things that a lot of people won't want to get into, or they feel like they can't get into it. And so you're that light to shine and inspire people on, like, how do we get into this? How do we find this? And here are some tips and tricks to getting into this. So Michael, just a little brief overview of how you got into land. If you could share that with everybody so we know.
Yeah. My real estate career started as an appraiser, built a nationwide appraisal company, which was great. Sold that, started flipping houses in the San Francisco Bay Area where I am right now. And then, 2008 hit and the market crashed and I just needed a break, so I took a couple of years off and got the real estate bug back and started listening to podcasts and YouTube, and heard people talk about land. And I started thinking, I don't need an appointment to see it. I don't need an appointment to sell it. I don't need to do anything to it. And it really started making sense. And it was a lot less competitive as well. So, turned it on, did a mailing, 500 postcards, bought 2 parcels, and put the pedal to the metal, and it's been going for about the last 7 to 8 years right now.
Amazing. And do you find right now that land has been hotter than ever?
Yeah, I mean, land is an absolutely incredible niche. We're doing extremely well. We'll do mailings, cold call, text, and what have you. But what I find out about these sellers is many of them see it as a liability. Someone may have inherited the property, and every year they get that darn tax bill. And we're there to provide a solution and hopefully put some funds in their pocket.
And that always seems to be the case, right? Like what seems to happen is a lot of these people are heirs, or they find out that their other partner owned a parcel with them and they just let it sit. They moved out of the state. They forgot all about it, just been sitting there. Or we even saw one come into the firm where the guy, the family owned this lot for 40 years. And they've been paying the taxes, and they thought they were going to build a house there one day. And all of a sudden now they're ready to sell because they don't want to deal with it. And it's like these crazy stories with land just keep popping up. Have you seen, getting into some like the hottest trends right now, have you seen like infill lots or rural areas or any type of particular land class be hotter than ever right now in 2024?
Well, we do a lot of infill lots, and one reason I like that, they're pretty easy to buy, and we dispose of them very, very quickly. So the infill lots are great. We work with many builders, and it's repeat business. So Habitat for Humanity, I think we've sold them 11 lots, but infill lots are really good.
That's great. And I remember we had a guest on that talked about infill lots as well. Jonathan Duong talked about the same thing. He's like, hey, like this is a hot thing right now. And, I love bringing on the land people like you because this is something that a lot of investors don't focus on. So when I got really into the probate niche, all all that was really happening was single family. And as a couple years progressed, all of a sudden I'm seeing land in Lee County pop up and Charlotte County pop up. And now builders want to come into these areas and Brevard. And so it's happening more and more. And I think it's piqued a lot of investors' interest in the land area. So just one big question for you, because I know you know the answer to it, but why land?
Well, when I flipped houses, we'd have a crew and, termite inspections, property inspections, a long period of time, more expensive with the funds. But land, again, we don't do anything to it. Many of the properties we buy, I never even see. So we just go ahead and we buy them, we get it under contract, and typically within 30 minutes, I'm already marketing that property. So when we close with the seller, a lot of times I'll close 10 minutes later, 2 days later with the end buyer. So it's a much easier process. No employees required if you don't want to do that. But then I have some students that do 600 deals a year.
600 deals a year. It is a lot. And even if you were making $5,000 to $10,000 on those 600 deals, I mean, that is plenty of business to go around. And if you're just hiring a VA for, a good price, I mean, you got a great business model going. And like you said, with land, there's no termite, there's no inspection, there's no tenants, right? So you're not dealing with all these other crazy things. You are dealing with some other hurdles that you got to get through, like environmental, wetland, permits, zoning. There's some other things. We'll get into that with the due diligence part of things. But and then speaking of your end buyers, what is a tip or trick for a lot of land people and investors out there to be able to build relationships and find builders and end buyers for your land deals?
Yeah, the way we find end buyers, if there's a National Association of Home Builders, and many times they have a local chapter. Where I am, they have 89 builders or 89 members, builders that build in my area. I'm working with about 10 of them. We use Facebook Marketplace quite a bit. I work one county, and I have over 600 individuals looking for land in my small county from promoting on Facebook Marketplace. I use PropStream quite a bit, and most people use that to build list. I turn it around and find out who's been buying that are investors, and very quickly we can market to them as well.
That's great. And are you like taking them out, like talking to them? Like, what's that relationship process looking like? Is it just an initial reach out and then just sending them the deals? Or how do you really make that a trusting relationship with the builder? So,
Some of it's just being proactive. Habitat for Humanity, I just called up and I let them know that I buy lots below market and I like to pass on the savings to my builders. And David that works there, now he's my buddy. We had lunch last week, so we developed those relationships, and with builders as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, that's great. I think people should do that more often when you have that budding relationship going and reoccurring business, because then it's like a no-brainer for people. Hey, I got a builder, boom, send. I got a builder for this deal, boom, they're ready to go, and it's just reoccurring.
So sometimes when we get it under contract, I had a teammate that got a property, and I said, let me make a phone call. So my teammate's on the phone. I made a phone call, and we sold the property to Habitat with one call, 30 minutes.
Wow. Boom. Done. And that deal's already off and going. So then you can focus on something else.
Yeah, done.
Awesome. Well, so let me dive into this, because I know it's one of your specialties, but I know you like focusing on selecting great markets using statistics. Elaborate on how that helps you become experts in your niche market, in your industry, so that others can get into this.
Yeah, so the tools I use to do that, I'll use PropStream, Redfin, Zillow, and I'll find out how many vacant lots or vacant properties that are in that market. And then I'll find out, well, how many sold in the last year. And then I'll find out how many are currently active. And I'll use the statistics for all three of those platforms, and it'll give me a percentage. And then I may go search another county or another 5 counties, and I'll have the percentages for all 5 counties. I can compare them against each other and see if one makes sense over the other ones.
Awesome. So leveraging software is really key.
you might have one county, Lee County might have 2%. I might do Escambia County and it might be 4%. And I see it's active. People are buying and selling. So I want to go into a county where there are transactions being done.
So when you think of it like that, do you define it as hot market, cold market? And is there really such a thing for you as cold markets?
Yeah, I mean, the statistics do vary widely, and I show the teammates exactly how to do it. And you might have one that has a 1 rating, one that has a 5 rating. And now that we've picked a market that looks good, I also want to go to the county appraiser's website and see how friendly the information is.
Gotcha. Yes. I think that a lot of people need to start using that more so they understand comps and numbers. And that's a big thing right now in some of the land groups, is making sure these land investors are using the right comps and numbers, and they're not overvaluing and killing the market in their area. Because some of these land areas get very saturated. Let's talk about one, Lehigh Acres. Lehigh Acres in Lee County is...
I'm very familiar with it.
And you know what's crazy is there's still so much coming from that one area.
Well, I look at an area like that an investor probably cut it up and sold it 40 years ago. And you look at it and there's very few houses. So the land flippers are just recycling.
And then it's amazing too, because it almost is like a test case in Lehigh. Because if you look at it from an aerial shot, you'll see land, house, and then house across, and then land, house. So you almost start to say, wait a second, maybe I need to look for areas like this where there's development, there's some homes, but there's land and opportunities, right? And so getting into those markets, I'm sure there's even more of those that are out there. I can think of an area in Highlands County. Remember, I had a case 2 years ago, and I was thinking, where is this thing? And I looked at a map, and you can see, you definitely can tell that a developer came in there 30 years ago, subdivided quarter acre lots,
right.
And all these little lots are being sold off and then reflipped again, or somebody buys it again or subdivides them. So these areas are just out there. How important is it to also work with the zoning departments and utility departments when it comes to finding opportunities?
Yeah, as we're going through our due diligence, one of the things I suggest, you just download the planning and zoning guide for that county, and it will tell you what's allowed under every zoning. So that's just part of the due diligence. Excuse me, the utility companies, I want to know if it's sewer or septic. And a lot of times a vacant parcel doesn't have an address. So usually what I'll do then is look for the nearest property that has a house on it. I give that address to the utility company and ask them, is it serviced by sewer or septic? So a suggestion that I have, many people are, they're in 50 counties. I suggest just picking 2 or 3, because then you get to know the values, you get to know the zoning. I'm talking with the same person Christina in the zoning department. I call the same utility company, and working with Habitat, we've done 11 transactions as opposed to doing one and then you're in another county and you have to learn the appraiser's website. And my suggestion is be the expert at 1, 2, or 3 counties.
I love that. I mean, there's a lot of investors that focus and go to all 67 in Florida, at least. I mean, there's other states that people invest in. But I like that model as well. I've had some people come to me recently that say, hey, Al, what have been your 3 favorite counties? What have been, they'll say, what are the easiest? Because we can talk about some of the hardest counties we've seen, like Brevard. It's
right.
Difficult. I mean, maybe great deals, but difficult. But then there's some of these other counties that the permits, the code enforcement, all these other utility companies are easier to work with. And so that's good to hear. So talk about the due diligence part, because this is the part that intrigues me. When you get into a land deal, it sounds great, and then all of a sudden you really have to do your due diligence, because you don't know if there's a gopher hole or there's a gopher on the boundary line. You don't know if that the corner of the lot is a wetland. I remember John Alexander talked about that 2-3 years ago on a deal where there's a little piece that was a wetland. Like there's all these little things, or check this out, Michael, you'll love this one. Or the one that got me was there was this lot in Volusia, and there's apparently this bird, and they have to do like a bird test to make sure that the bird doesn't fly into the area. And if the bird flies in, it's like an endangered species thing. Talk to us about due diligence, because there's too much.
Yeah, well, I think I do due diligence different than 99% of the people. One, I do due diligence on the property, but then I do due diligence on the seller. And I really dig deep there. It helps us stay out of deals that we don't want to, people we don't want to deal with. But by doing the due diligence, you understand their situation, and it helps us with negotiating. But you want to make sure, does it have road access? Are there easements? Are there wetlands? Are there flood zones? Are there endangered species? And after you work the same areas over and over again, you don't have to go to a new county and try to find out what are all the endangered species and what have you. And so it becomes a pretty quick process. So to do due diligence on a property, it's typically 5 or 10 minutes. And if I'm not sure, then typically I'll call planning and zoning, the utility companies, to dig a little bit deeper. But then I like to do due diligence on the people. So I could have 2 identical lots side by side, and I may offer one guy 10,000 and I may offer the other guy 6,000, because we basically do a background on them. So I look for bankruptcies, liens, judgments. I pull up their criminal history, business licenses, business affiliations, taxes, liens, and what have you. One of the teammates was just going to buy a property, and the seller insisted on using his own title company, and it didn't sound right. So we did a background on him, and he had felonies, forgery of public records, and basically what I think he was trying to do was get $60,000 from them, and basically take their money.
Whoa!
So very quickly, it's a $1.75 search. Very quickly, I do due diligence on the people, and whether they're house flippers. Most people don't do that, but I want to know their situation, and I do that before I start negotiating with them.
Good to know, because I don't think we've had anybody come on that talks about due diligence of the seller for a land deal. So, right. Let's break this down. So 2 sides to this. We have the due diligence on the land itself, and that sounds like, for you, that sounds like a run of the mill. Just got to look at this, look at that, make sure this, maybe have somebody come out and inspect the land, make sure that there's no gophers and turtles and some endangered species. But then there's this other side of the sellers on land deals that, I've heard of some land deals in the last 2 years where there's been some fraud, where people are trying to hold themselves out as being the owner or do some kind of wild deed. And they've been targeting a lot of foreign landowners. So there's there's a thing with that. And I remember one of the underwriting companies actually put an alert out about this, like being careful for this. But it's crazy hearing it from you on this side of diving in on that sellers, because it sounds like a normal thing to be like, hey, I got a seller, I'm ready to go under contract. I believe them. I'm more worried about the deal. What are some other things or resources that investors should be tapping into to really hone in on this due diligence with sellers? Because I think this is going to happen more.
Yeah, well, we go ahead and build our list through 13 or 14 different niches. And after I build them, I run them through a tool called Versium. And it's a little costly, but I run it through Versium, and it will give me their age, their gender, their marital status, their annual income, their net worth, year, make, and model of cars, credit scores. So I can really take a large list and filter it down. And then before I even market, I try to find the list of people that need to sell. So I'll do a campaign for people, credit scores under 599, people over 65. And a lot of the transactions we do are people that are over 55. Again, credit scores, household income. So I have all that information even before I contact them. And then it will save a lot on marketing costs as well.
I didn't even know you can get stuff like that.
Yeah.
I didn't Versium.
It's great. It's great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if there's a golden nugget on the show tonight, there you go for due diligence on sellers. And that probably would apply to single family, commercially.
A lot of the things that I show people, it's just nuggets that I've learned over 30 plus years. And it's really good for any type of product. You know, I have student teammates for land, but a lot of the tools and marketing, what have you, due diligence works for any product.
Incredible. Let's back up real quick on the due diligence for the land deal itself. Easements and landlocked property. How are you overcoming those issues? Because there have been investors that find deals that are landlocked or have no right of way or access to that property, and there are sellers that are ready to get this thing sold. Yeah. And the sellers have tried to talk to the landowners, or maybe they're not in communication. How do you address those types of deals that could be juicy?
Well, I'll give you a specific example. A gentleman contacted us. His property was landlocked. And if there's risk, I'll just price in the risk. But he bought the property 23 years ago for $4,300. The county has it assessed at $4,500. It's wetlands. It's landlocked. It's got power lines going through it, but I knew he paid $4,300. I knew it was assessed at $4,500, and properties typically sell for double the assessed value where I am. So I gave him $2,000 cash, met him at the UPS store. He quick claimed it to me, listed it with the realtor, and sold it for $10,000 in 6 hours.
Whoa. Boom. Just like that.
Landlocked properties are okay. I just need to price in my risk. So the other one I did that was landlocked, first deal I did, paid $100 for it and sold it 3 hours later on Craigslist for $1,000. So I'll do landlocked. I just want to price in the risk, but the best person to sell it to is typically the neighbors.
Gotcha. And so because the neighbors, they've been probably looking at that property for years, or they've been trying to get in touch with those people for years. Right. And then I've heard of stories where, you try talking to the neighbors and they don't want to provide the access or the right of way or the road just to get in there. And so then it becomes a whole other legal issue. I've heard of those that have come up with some deals, but this is something that has popped up from time to time with landlocked, and I've heard about it from other investors in Texas that have that happen. Big lots, and then it's landlocked. And I know your favorite, Logan Fulmer. He's probably talked about that. Logan's great with that kind of stuff. So, Michael, let me talk to you about this. I know one of the things that you're big on is building a spectacular list using 14 niches that you market to. What is this about?
I'll share with you some of the niches, and some of the information I will get after I run my list through Versium. But probate is a great example, and where I can find some of those, you can use a data provider, or when I go into the county and I want to do a name search, I'll just put estate. And so the person that has title to the property typically is deceased, and the mail is going to in care of someone else. So where the mail's going, they're getting the tax bill, but they don't own the property. And so working with you, we can go to these people and provide them a solution. So they want the money, they're heirs, and they don't know what to do. So we can go to them and provide a solution. So instead of them paying the tax bill every year, it would be, would you rather write a check or would you rather get a check? So probate's a good one. People over 65, people with low credit scores, code enforcement liens. We have one in escrow right now. Woman lived out of state. There's an $8,000 code enforcement lien. Many people don't know I can get those liens waived. So we bought it from her for $8,000. She turned around and listed it with my realtor, and she sold it to a builder for $18,000. Expired MLS listings. I'll find people that tried to sell. Well, I know they all tried to sell. They just didn't get their price. So I'll go back from 3 years ago to about 8 years ago. And if it failed, then I'll contact them. And an example, I had a woman, she tried to sell for $10,000 about 5 years ago. I contacted her 2 years ago. She tried to sell for $10,000. I skip traced her, called her up and offered her $10,300, sold it to a builder for $25,000 3 days later. So various niches like that. again, code enforcement liens, delinquent taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in Florida, they get their tax bill November 1st.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't pay it by June 1st, the county wants the money, so they'll sell a certificate to the public. So I pull a list from 2022 and before for properties that have certificates. So these people are chronically delinquent. So we took the list of 1,500, we scrubbed it, did our due diligence, and narrowed it down to 650 lots that we want. And that letter's going out as we speak.
Got it.
So they're over 2 years behind. They're chronic. So altogether, I have 14 now that we're doing the certificates, and most people don't focus on these niches. So land's less competitive, but then the niches I do is even way less competitive. So we are there to provide a solution.
And this is great value because everybody's trying to find that less competitive niche.
Yeah, and you can use it for houses, house flippers, or really any real estate product.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you were doing single family, a lot of people look up the pre-foreclosures, like that's another avenue. But the three that really stood out to me that you talked about is probate, obviously, number one, right? Totally untapped, totally a golden niche market, something that's going to keep on giving, because this is just starting with the silver tsunami in Florida. This is just starting with all these people that own property and now need to sell. And who knows, the economy goes up, down, and everybody's got some kind of probate issue going on. So probate, number one. Number two, code enforcement. I spoke at the code enforcement conference last summer, and I remember how many of the code enforcement officers came up to me and said, we're like, hey, we're going through this, we're going through that. And we even had Glenn Guzman on the show, and Glenn talked about a lot of these issues and how when you work with code enforcement officers, it's possible to get these things reduced down. I mean, they're not going to say zero, but you got to build those relationships. But number three, the tax delinquents. I talk about this with so many investors that are like, hey, what have been the hottest things? All I hear about are tax delinquents. Somebody's behind in their taxes, whether 1 to 2 years. And then let's add another layer to this. Ready, Michael? What makes some of these tax delinquents so good is that eventually that 2-year mark already lapses, and one of those certificate holders has now applied for that property to go up for a tax deed auction. What does that mean? Time's ticking. So you're really against the wall, and the seller's got either they sell or that's going to auction. And sure, they can collect surplus and get into that, but they're going to lose an opportunity. And so it's a time-sensitive situation. So I agree with your niches. I agree with this.
Yeah, the tax delinquent, the list that we have right now, it's published. It goes out till next July. So we go ahead and we go through there, make sure it's vacant land, and we mail to them every month. It's just a recurring. So they have 3 choices. They can go ahead and pay the taxes and redeem it. They can lose the property, or they can sell it to someone like us.
Yeah, I get it. And talk to us a little bit about probate. What have you loved so much about the probate side of it with land? Like, what is it working with the heirs? Is it that they just are so motivated because they didn't know about it? What makes it so lucrative on the probate side?
Yeah, well, most of them, it's a liability for them. They're getting that darn tax bill. They may have more than one heir on the property, and we're basically there to provide a solution for them. The challenge is we'll contact them. They don't want to pay for the probate fees. So we'll contact them. They say, well, I don't want to write a check. And I'm thinking, well, I need to be very careful if I'm writing a check, but working with you, it really puts everything together, and we can provide a solution that it wins for the heir. Hopefully it works very well for you, and it's a great win for us as well.
Right, because if you're working with somebody that's waiting until that closing, taking the risk on the fee side of it, and saying, "Hey, we got to get this done. Are you all under contract?" It works out for everybody. It's no risk to the seller, and it's no risk to the investor, and it's all just based off the analysis that we got to do, and how many probates are we doing, and what is that price point? Right? Does the price point work for both seller, buyer, and do you have an end buyer that's going to come in at the point that the deal makes sense? And are we good with zoning? Are we good with code enforcement? So all these things have to get analyzed, but definitely probate and tax delinquent properties and and all these other markets that are in Florida, it's been hotter than ever. I'm just seeing it. I mean, Marion County, price point's amazing there now. It's like, I can just see the counties that we're not talking about right now, Michael, that are going to be the hot ones in 25, 26, and 27, like Columbia County. Like, no, who's going to Columbia right now? Right? Like, or Gadsden or Bay counties. Like, who's going? And that's the thing, is like, this is where the future's going, focusing on those.
Yeah, depending on the appraiser's website as well, how you can search it. We put a state or a state of. So we'll bring up all the properties that the person that's on title is deceased, and then we'll go ahead and do our due diligence. But we have approximately 140 right now that we're working through the pipeline that we can provide these heirs a solution.
And it works because they don't know about this, right? They don't know that their parents own this property. They're shocked for the first time. And people cannot believe when I talk about stories where I get on the phone and for the first time they had just found out about this property from the investor doing direct mail. How'd you get my name? How'd you get my number? I didn't know mom or dad owned this. I didn't know my sister or brother even owned this property. Or we're super tired of paying the back taxes. We're just done. We're done. You know, why have I been paying the back taxes all these years? For what? Yeah. I don't have, even when you pay the back taxes, doesn't mean they have the title to the property. So what are they doing? And so they're done with it. And like you said, it's another motivating factor, and they're ready to go. It's fantastic.
Every year they get that darn tax bill.
And they're done. They're done. I love it. Have you been getting into any creative financing with the lands?
Even though I've been at this for many, many, many years, I continue to take courses, and I'm taking Eddie Speed's course right now. He is amazing. And I'm not going to tell you how much I've spent on courses over all the years. His course by far is the best course that I've been in, the best value. I enrolled about 90 days ago. And he has some creative financing where I can offer more than any competitor and end up making more money. So he has many great techniques that I'm happy to share more with people, you know, as we connect. But house flipper may pay 70 cents on the dollar. What I'm learning from him, $100,000 house will pay 70. So they're all bidding 69, 70, 72. If I did houses, we could pay 95 and make more money than all those people that are paying 70. And so we can do the same thing with land.
Yes. And we've had on guests that talk about the opportunity of doing seller terms and how that it's a greater opportunity doing a seller terms deal versus just the traditional cash deal or buy deal. Like there's so much more to it, and you have to build out that schedule, and you even explain it to the seller or you explain it to your buyer. Right. So those are huge. And Michael, in terms of marketing to all these different land opportunities, I know you love direct mail. Give us some tips and tricks and tactics that you implement with your students, your deals, that really get the attention of that seller.
Yeah, my suggestion is, and many people will mail out these 2 or 3 page things, and these people get this mail and they don't want to read it. My letter's 3 or 4 paragraphs. It's very personal. I let them know how long I've lived there, who we are as a family, and it's very non-threatening. It just says basically, if you would consider entertaining an offer, just very soft and what have you. Just use a white envelope, no windows, real stamp. So hopefully it gets opened. So that works out fairly well. One thing I could do better is mail more on a regular basis, but I do have there's some other coaches out there. They have people mail 7,000 letters a month. It's very expensive. I mail maybe 6,000 pieces a year and do as many or more deals because we pick a good market, we build a great list, and we know exactly which properties we want.
7,000 mailers in a month. That adds up so fast too. Yeah. I mean, you better be bringing the ROI in on that, because if you're not, then you're just shelling out a ton of money. And I like your strategy because it reminds me of what I saw McLean Bobbitt comment on in the REI SIF page. I don't know if you know McLean, but McLean talked about how he sees so many of these people do exactly that. 7,000 mailers, 8,000. And it's like, get down in the trenches, get down in that niche, go to the 1% of that, and of the 7,000, you should be like really honing in on the 100, right? And I'm sure he would talk about like, sure, you could scatter the board and throw it all over the place. But when you hone in on that, that's when you're getting your most quality ones, right?
And one thing, I've got one teammate, he mails out 24,000 pieces a month, and he makes 24,000 phone calls a month. But one thing he does, and we do, we have a VA or someone go through those and do a quick due diligence before, so you're not mailing double the amount of letters you should be mailing, because when they call you, you find out it's a little triangle and we don't want it anyway. So spend some time up front quickly, 30 seconds just going through these and doing some due diligence, cut your list in half, and that will save you a lot of money on marketing, and you're dealing with people for properties that you want.
And are you doing like just regular mail? Are you doing certified mail? Are you like?
Yeah, I do first class. I love return mail. That's one of my niches. I love return mail because most people do it and they put it on the floor and it sits there in a pile. So I mail first class, so it comes back and says it's undeliverable. As soon as we get it back, I use IDI Core, and that helps me do background checks. It's good for skip tracing, gives me emails, phone numbers, relatives, the criminal history and all that. But I can be on the phone with these people with the return mail. Well, if my mail's not getting there, my competitor's mail's not getting there, so we can be on the phone with them, 30 seconds or in a minute. And it's good because they're not getting their tax bill.
Got it. And return mail. So you're getting it back, it's saying undelivered, and then you're just taking that additional step to go find out where are these people, are they out of state? Is there a relative, in some way to get in touch and find out those numbers. And it's great that you brought up the software, because usually one of my signature questions is, what software do you leverage? But I think we covered that, right? Between Versium, IDI Core, and then some of the names of prop streams. It's great to hear that there's all this opportunity for diving deeper. I think a lot of people, resort to some of the free stuff, which is fine. We talked about that, White Pages or People Finder or Been Verified. I'm sure you probably use those. Like Been Verified has been known to be really good about digging deeper for heirs or relatives and people out there. But then, like you said, like there's all these other things too that, maybe you're going to be paying a little bit more for it, but it's something that's going to work.
Yeah, well, going through Eddie Speed's training, one of his sayings is the people in real estate, they're the best marketers. Yeah, we're all great at marketing, but if we're getting one deal out of 20 leads, there's probably deal 2 or deal 3 in there as well. And part of that can be creative financing. So if you can get from 1 out of 20 to 2 out of 20, you're doubling your revenue very quickly, just using some of the tools. But we're all great at marketing, but it's just knowing how to get it to the finish line.
Got it. I love it. Well, Michael, I got to say, this has been great. I mean, lots of info in this episode, and I think there's a lot of different tips and tricks that people can get. And I've had people, Michael, that got stuck on a deal. And because they watched the show and they heard the guests and what they talked about, they were able to implement that in their process and help them pick up another deal and find another heir. So I know there will be people listening to these episodes and watching these shows that will implement that, because they tell my producer, Michael. I mean, they tell people out there like, hey, I used that tip or trick to actually get the deal. And it's awesome. And I know that's going to be the value out there. So I love what you talked about today. And as you know, because I'm sure you've seen the show, I got signature questions for you. And these are ones that we've been doing all season 5 on some of the things that we want to know from you that goes even beyond the land part of things. So first question for you, Michael, is a lot of investors need to tap into their communities. They need to tap into their resources. They need to tap into their Facebook groups. What would you say are some of the best communities, groups that investors need to be a part of?
Yeah, a great group, Jim Ingersoll. He has a group called Dealmaker. I would recommend that. Um, I suggest joining all the real estate groups on Facebook Marketplace in your area for a couple reasons. One is to get relationships there, but then when you get a property, it's a good way to promote it as well. So Facebook Marketplace, if it's land, start networking with the local builders. So Grand Builders, I was driving down the neighborhood. I see the guy building the house. I got out and I said, I buy land below market and I pass on the savings. Well, just get out there and network. I've sold them 7 lots as well. Go to some of the REIs in your area as well.
Yeah, REIs. RIAs are incredible value, right? Tapping into the right RIA. So in Jacksonville, we got Jax RIA, right? Jax RIA is killing it right now with the resources, the learning. And then you have RIAs down in South Florida, RIAs in Pensacola, RIAs that are, throughout the U.S. RIAs provide value. And in RIAs, you're going to have some new people, but then there's going to be the seasoned people, the whales that show up. They've been doing this for 20, 30 years. And those are people that you really want to connect with and talk to. And then the Facebook groups. How valuable are these Facebook groups? Like REI SIF's Facebook group, one of the most valuable groups out there that I've seen. Everybody's doing deals. Everybody's collaborating. Secrets are dropped. Nobody's holding back. And like you said, Jim Ingersoll's, I haven't seen that one, but I'm sure it's another great group. So whether it's in person or conferences, if a conference is happening, in person or Facebook groups, love that answer because it's out there.
Yeah, you build from the local RIA. Now I've got a couple buddies there, and we go out to lunch and we network and what have you. Just get involved in your community.
Love it. Absolutely. 100% agree with that. So, when it comes to this market that we're in, when some sellers maybe don't want to sell, maybe some sellers want to talk about price, I think it's an important time to hone in on your skills, whether it's the real estate skill, a sales skill, or maybe there's another skill. What would you say is the most important skill a real estate investor, a real estate professional needs to have right now?
Speaking personally, what works well, I just try to be personal and friendly with people. Do they like you? I think that's half the battle right there. Do they like you? Building rapport. So when I have an initial call with the seller, I know everything about the property and I'll ask them a few questions, but really what I'm trying to do is build rapport. And I'm not trying to close them on the first deal. First thing they say to me, what's your offer? I have a good way of diffusing that. But then after I've built some rapport, coming back to them, it makes the process much better. But it's just being a nice person and engaging with them.
And I agree with that. I find that even being on my consults that I get, it really warms up the airs, right? And so it's you being you. It's not you're trying. And when you, whether you have to hire somebody for that, maybe that's not your process. Maybe you need to hire somebody that has that type B personality. I've heard of investors that do that. When you have that caring, compassionate, nice, it really warms them up. It gets them going because a lot of people have never talked to maybe an investor or a lawyer or a professional. They've never talked to it. It's like first time, so they don't know what to expect. But when they feel open, that's when the flow of communication happens and good vibes. It's maybe not all about the deal, but they're like, hey, how's your day going? Where are you at? Like, is it snowing? Is it raining? It's been hot. It was crazy here. You don't even have to talk about the real estate. Just warm them up. So I love your answer when you really get into that. Michael, last question. So I know you've talked a lot about the external side of the business. External being the land, the marketing, real estate as a whole. But then there's also the internal structure in your business of how you've made it go, right? Maybe it's hiring the assistants, VAs. How has your company approach evolved over the years internally?
Well, going back a step, when I had the appraisal company, I had 65 employees, and we're doing 7,000 appraisals a month throughout the United States. At this point in my life, I'm not looking for that. So my needs are not what they used to be. So I started the land business just by myself. My wife helped me. Now she's helping me less. And then I have two full-time VAs. Louise, who I believe spoke to your office yesterday.
Yep.
I spent 8 months full-time. She's in the Philippines, full-time on Zoom, training her exactly what I do. So it was like an 8-month college course. She can do everything that I can do. So that really helps a lot. So I prefer to focus on, talking to the sellers, negotiating and doing the transaction, but she can do a lot of that stuff. So if it's a mailing, it's just gone. If it's pulling a list, she can do all that. That helps a lot. And she hired a VA to help her, and they both help me. So when I give her stuff, she has someone that helps her, but it helps both for the land business. And we have a small course. I'm not a teacher guru with thousands of students. I have no interest in that. Approximately 125 people. And I think what they like most is I'm accessible, very easy to get hold of.
Right. So what I take from you is you're at a different point in your life right now than dealing with what you dealt with a lot of employees. And that's a lot. I mean, I know what managing 9 is like. I can imagine 65, right? And then having different leadership roles for those roles. But what I'm gathering for you from you and what you said is, if you truly invest the time, and it may take a year, if you invest the time to find that one VA or that one person that can even train someone else to bring someone else on, that is an incredible resource for you, because now you've completely delegated multiple tasks without having to retrain another person. And so I like the investment itself into finding a VA or an assistant that can take it off your plate, and you don't need to go full scale, right? Sometimes being on a smaller scale, I've definitely thought about it too. It's like being on a smaller scale sometimes is even better, right? You're not dealing with more problems. Yeah. More things equals more problems. So maybe having less to it actually can be good too.
Well, one other thing I like about the land business, I'm in California right now. I got here, I'm at my mom's. I got here last night. I can turn off the land business for 2 weeks, and I can go back home and I can turn it right back on. The course I can't, because I'm accountable, but I can do land deals right here today. So you can do it. You can pick a market anywhere. You can do it from anywhere. It gives you the why. It's, you want to take care of your family. You want the lifestyle. You want to have your own time. It's great to be very independent and do it when you want.
I'm sure. And that's the beauty of working from home, virtual, working from anywhere, and running your own business, right? Making it work, finding a system and process so that you can do this as well. And Michael, this has been awesome. Love it. I'm happy we got to do this. I'm happy we got to connect. Every time I'm seeing some of your students come in, I'm like, oh my gosh, Michael is really showing them the way and really educating. And I love that. And for anybody that wants to find you, we've been putting the chyrons up. We've been cycling through it. So if you want to reach out to Michael, find his Facebook group, get in touch with him, email him. We got it right here throughout the whole show. Tons of value right here. And Michael, as I do on the Al Nicoletti Show, I do my final segment called Final Words, Final Thoughts. Anything that you want to really leave everybody with an impact back home, watching, seeing the show. So as I do, final words, final thoughts, Michael Robertson.
Yeah, land is an absolutely incredible niche. It's the transactions are so much quicker. You have to do nothing to the property. And I can do it from anywhere. I done the houses and everything, but I have a passion for land.
And that's the beauty. I love it. We're going to leave it right there. Michael, you're a joy to have on. Thank you so much for connecting with me. And I hope to work on deals with you in the future. I mean, this is what it's all about, relationships building. So if you're out there and you're watching this episode, make sure you reach out to Michael Robertson. Tons of info, tons of value right there. So Michael, It's a wrap. I hope to see you soon and connect with you again, my friend.
Appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being on. I'll see you soon. All right, everybody, you heard it right there from Michael Robertson. This guy is killing it with land deals, and he's getting very niche with land. You can see that it's not just that he's going all over. He's really taking that scope and really getting down in it, really getting in the trenches, finding out the niches and finding out the niches that work. And over his 30 plus years of doing this, you can see that he's really found what's working, and he dropped some nuggets. If you didn't catch some of the software tips, got to go back. If you didn't catch some of the counties and ideas and niches, he gave it to you. I mean, obviously probate was a big one, but there's other ones out there, and there's ones that other guests have talked about on the show, right? We've had so many guests that come on that talk about land, and then this one is talking about more. See, there's so much to these episodes. There's so much to land that you got to get these episodes and you got to hone in on it. So if you missed any of it, go back, check it out. And of course, you know where to find us. Scan that QR code right at the bottom right there. It'll bring up the link tree, all the content, and you'll find everything from the Al Nicoletti Show and me, myself, doing videos out there, doing micros and talking to people. Don't miss it. And we are going to see you all next week for another amazing episode. I'll see y'all next week. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.